Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Organizing Life's Daily Demands. I'm Peter Gordon. I'm the president of New York Financial Organizers, and we help people organize their non-investment financial issues. And we do this by helping them pay their bills and dealing with insurance and other, again, non-investment side of personal finance. And the purpose of this podcast is to introduce our listeners and viewers to other people who can help and other professionals who can help people organize other aspects of their lives. And I'm really excited. I have a wonderful guest today, Britt Burner, who is an attorney at Burner Law Group. And welcome, Britt.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. So why don't I like starting with my guests telling us a little bit about themselves.
Sure. So I live in Manhattan and in West Hampton Beach, but I grew up on Long Island, different part of Long Island than West Hampton did. And I work at Burner Law Group. I'm a partner with my mother, Nancy Burner, and she started the firm back when I was in high school. So quite some time ago, and we've grown over the years. So now we have 4 offices. We have Manhattan, East Setauket, West Hampton Beach, and East Hampton. And our practice areas are trusts and estates, elder law, and real estate transactions. And I'm really excited to be here today and to talk about organizing people's legal affairs.
Yes, and which is so critical. And I love working with you. And I just love your demeanor and how you handle people and talk to them about really difficult subjects, but so important, really, really critical for them to plan ahead. But as I said, difficult. But what inspired you to become an attorney, specifically in trust and estates?
So it's interesting, or I think interesting. I actually swore that this is the only profession I would never have. Most people think I was preordained to do what I do today because of my family, because of my mom. But I truly, my whole life said, I'll never be a lawyer. I'll never be a lawyer. I finished my undergraduate and I thought, wow, I really don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to go work in a law firm. And I worked in big law prior to going to law school, a big law firm.
Doing what?
Intellectual property litigation. Totally different. So
in what capacity?
So I was a paralegal and we worked on patent infringement trials.
Fascinating.
Yeah, very interesting, different situation that I'm in now. Then I went to law school and I was, headed for that big law world. I started after law school. I started at a big firm, and then it kind of became clear that there was the 2008 crash, and I was my firm gave me the opportunity to leave and still get paid, and with the idea that I could come back after 18 months. So I left, thinking, okay, I'm going to figure out what I want to do. I'm going to get some skills, and then I'll come back to the firm. And I went and I was a sex crimes prosecutor in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, Kings County, for a year. And so I said, okay, well, this was great, but I definitely don't want to do this. I also didn't want to go back to my firm. And just happened to be that my mom broke her shoulder and I was helping take care of her. And she said, okay, work with me, help take care of me, and you can just interview for jobs and find a job that you like. So I said, okay, fine. I started working with her and I all of a sudden just took to the area of the law. I loved it. I loved feeling like I was helping people solve problems. I liked the legal aspect of finding an issue and researching it and finding new and interesting ways to get around a problem. And I really loved the clients. So then it became clear to me that's what I wanted to do, but I still swore I would never work with my mom. So I found a job at a different firm doing the same thing as her and worked there for a few years. And then finally we said, okay, this is silly. And I joined her firm and fast forward, I guess it was 8 years after I joined her firm, she made me a partner. So it was a long road to get here, but finally made it. And I love it. I love the people like you. I love sitting down with a family, with an individual and helping them understand things that are being thrown at them and find their way through.
Yeah, and that comes through very clearly when I work with you and I see you talk to prospective clients or clients, and it's really important. And it's interesting you mentioned about working with your mom, because I work with my son, so I'm on the other side, and I couldn't imagine ever working with my dad. He was a civil servant, so that wasn't going to happen, and so it wasn't a plan. But things work out for a reason, and I feel the same way. So obviously, we talk about meeting with people, and you're dealing with people and trying to help them plan their estates. Why is it difficult for people to discuss their estates? Because I certainly find that.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that really contribute to it. I think there's the obvious: people don't want to talk about dying, and they don't want to talk about becoming disabled. So I make them do both, and they really, really hate that. We keep tissues.
Kind of like selling insurance to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of at the base of it. I think it's making difficult decisions, who to put in these positions as power of attorney, as healthcare agent, executor, trustee, who to leave your assets to. Sometimes it's not as simple as I have 2 children split at 50-50. Sometimes there's a lot more complication that goes into it. But I think the really big thing is that people don't understand it. They don't understand the process, and they don't understand the consequences of doing nothing, or the consequences of having a bad will or an online will or a will that gets lost or all of these things. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And I think that is the main hurdle to people getting this done.
Yeah, and it isn't simple. I mean, it is complicated. There's I guess it's a 7-letter word, probate, that gets thrown around, and it's difficult to understand that. I'm kind of throwing this out of nowhere, but you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I talk about probate being the number one misconception in this whole process. The bulk of the people who come through our door think that if you have a good will, and I put goodwill in quotes, if you have a good will, you avoid probate. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. Probate and wills need each other. You can't have probate if there's no will. And if there's a will, it needs to go through probate. They require each other. They're completely dependent upon each other. And so I think a lot of people think that probate is something that they know they want to avoid it, but they don't understand the mechanisms by which they can avoid it. And I think people also don't realize what it even means to go through probate. For example, someone will come in and say, "Don't worry, I've got a really easy situation. I have no family. I just need a will." What that person often doesn't realize is that they are the last person who should have a will that goes through probate, because probate requires notification of your legal next of kin, those persons that New York State says would get your assets if you had no will. We call them your distributees. And so what happens is people think, oh, well, I will have my, excuse me. I'll have my will, and it's going to say that everything goes to my favorite charity and maybe my friend, and that's the end of story. But what they don't realize is that will goes to probate. Probate requires notification of your next of kin, and if you don't know who your next of kin are, that's not good enough. They have to be found, or a lot of time and money has to be spent on trying to find them and proving to the court that we really looked and we couldn't find these people. So I say the phrase all the time: we all have next of kin. You just don't know who yours are. If we go out far enough branches, enough, sub branches on that family tree, you will find someone eventually. It just might be a, 8th cousin twice removed, or however that works. And hire genealogists. So probate is not always the end of the world, but every individual person needs to know what their probate would look like if they're going to determine if probate's the right route for them or not.
Yeah, no. What other documents? There are a couple of documents that are critical, and I want you to talk about that.
Sure. So the healthcare advanced directives, healthcare proxy, living will, HIPAA release form, these are really important to say who makes medical decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself, and what kinds of decisions you would want them to make on your behalf, end of life decisions, et cetera. There is a default in the law. It's called the Family Healthcare Decisions Act. So if you're in a hospital and you don't have a healthcare proxy, there's a default as to who can make those decisions for you. However, the default might not be who you would choose, and there might be multiple people at that level. So for example, if you're not married, but you have 3 children, all 3 children have equal authority under that law. And if they have different ideas as to the types of decisions that should be made, and they might have different ideas than you would have, you wouldn't want that to be left up to chance to who gets there first and gets in the doctor's ear. So really choosing those individuals is important.
And what's critical also about that is that you want the ability to make that decision. And by appointing somebody, you could tell them what it is that you want, and that hopefully they will, make those decisions based on your desires.
Yeah, and a lot of it could be religious beliefs. It could be just your life experience, things you've seen, those that have seen others go through a long, prolonged illness might have a different idea about what the end of life would look like based on their experience. And everybody's experience is going to be different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about power of attorney?
Yeah. So in addition to the healthcare documents, and I should say for the healthcare documents as well as for the power of attorney, there is no right age to do this. I have all of these documents myself. You should have them. Everyone should have them.
I should have them?
Yes.
Yes, I do. It's funny you say that, because my partner, my son, Jacob, who's going to be 30 next week, he's so proud that he has an estate plan, that he has that. And he's always telling his friends who are in their late 20s, early 30s, that they should get it. And he tries to convert, and he's working on his in-laws, and that hasn't happened. And he knows the importance of it.
Yeah. And the power of attorney, I mean, the important thing to realize is it's not one and done, right? So I did my estate plan probably 10 years ago at this point. But as things change in life, the individuals in my life might change. I can change those documents. And the power of attorney is no different. It can be revoked. So a power of attorney is a document that talks about the financial decisions, the business of your life. And so if you need someone, I often say to people, it's meant for the things where you have to call and authenticate who you are. So that's how you can think of what your power of attorney is going to do for you. So if you have to call,
that's a great line.
The last 4 digits of your social, and if you are not the individual, you would then be lying and saying you are. So the goal is to have this power of attorney document, to have the document let an agent that you're naming on your behalf, be it a family member or a professional like your organization, having them be listed in the document, and then have that document be on file with the institutions that you might want this person to act on your behalf for, so that they can call up and say, I'm not Britt, but I'm Britt's agent. You have the document. They can go through the authentication, and then they can get the information. I got a phone call yesterday, a gentleman who his father has all these different life insurance policies. And he just found out, his father's 94, and he just found out that the father has life insurance policies on multiple family members, but he's the owner of all the policies. And the son is trying to make sure everything is set up in terms of dad's estate with beneficiaries and ownership. And every time he calls one of these policies or companies to get the change of ownership forms or the change of beneficiary forms to help dad, they won't let him talk because the power of attorney is not on file with all the different companies. So he has to be with his dad between 9 and 5 at the hours he can call the place. And the father was resistant to some estate planning. And if he had a proper power of attorney and put it on file, we wouldn't have to go through that every time just for the son to get this simple information.
Yeah, that's right. And, we run into cases where people have no power of attorney and they have no one else in their life. And that's where we'll get involved to become the power of attorney. but they have to have the ability to make that decision. Just briefly talk about that and the importance of the reason why it's important to have that power of attorney while you can make that decision.
Yeah. So people always say, is it durable? We hear this word all the time with powers of attorney, durable. Durable means it's in effect now and if I become incapacitated. So all powers of attorney in New York are durable unless they say they're not. So they don't say the word at the top of the form anymore, but they are durable. I've actually never seen a non-durable power of attorney.
Thank you, because I have an issue with the prospective client of exactly about that. Yeah.
It's the thing that wrong people say, no, I need a durable one. I'm like, it's durable. It's fine. You're good. So, what happens is if somebody doesn't have the power of attorney and they don't have the ability to sign one because they don't have the mental capacity to name a person or to understand that they are giving these powers away, then I, as a lawyer, I'm not going to prepare that document. I'm not going to sign it. I'm not going to witness it. I'm not going to notarize it because they don't understand what they're doing. But so we want people to plan early so these documents are in place. And this is a perfect example of the consequence of not doing it is a guardianship proceeding, an Article 81 mental hygiene law guardianship proceeding in the Supreme Court of the state. It is a long process. It's an expensive process. And in the end, it results in the court having a constant insight and hand on your assets and understanding, the good part is a guardian has to account to the court. But the bad part is if the guardian is the spouse, because, there's IRAs that we couldn't do, and there's other things that the spouse couldn't do on behalf of their incapacitated spouse, then now all of a sudden you have this couple who's been married for 60 years and the court is doing an accounting of everything that the spouse is doing. And it's really intrusive and invasive. And so if you have someone that you feel comfortable naming as power of attorney, you should 100% have one signed. You don't necessarily need to provide it to all your banks. You don't even need to have the other person sign it yet. You should just have it in place so that if something should happen and you do become incapacitated, your life is not subject to this court proceeding and strangers coming in.
That's perfectly explained. It's great. So I know you're involved in the New York State Bar. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you do with the Bar Association?
Sure. So I am an officer of the Elder Law and Special Needs Planning section of the New York State Bar Association. So I think I'm the vice chair. I always forget my title. And so you move up every year. I don't really pay.
That's why I like you.
I believe I'm the vice chair. And we do a lot of different things. We do lobbying of the state government. So when laws change, a lot of times the budget reflects changes in the Medicaid laws that might not be in the best interest of clients or constituents, Medicaid recipients. And so we do a lot of lobbying. I've helped write affirmative legislation. We have a law right now regarding elder abuse and the banking law. To make a change to the New York State banking law regarding suspected elder abuse and how that should be handled, which we're trying to get through the government.
Wow, I look forward to talking to you about that. That's really important for us.
Yeah, it's we all know elder abuse is a big problem, but we also want to make sure that it's a workable law. So the banks are they're worried about their own liability for releasing assets to someone that shouldn't receive them. But we also want to make things so difficult, again, for that power of attorney who is named and who does have the power. We want to make it a workable law for that person. So
this is a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, once it passes, we'll do it. So we write affirmative legislation, and then we educate each other. We educate other lawyers across the state on issues of trust and estates and elder law. We collaborate. So right now I have an issue with Medicaid where I have to bring an appeal, and I've got attorneys all over the estate who are interested in the issue and helping us on the issue. So it's a really great place for me to get information and then to give back to my profession and, provide CLEs and to give information to the other attorneys.
I don't think people realize how collegial being an attorney is and the relationships that they have with one another. And it's really great. I mean, attorneys have bad raps, but I know my experience, especially dealing with elder law attorneys and trust and estate attorneys, is that they're really helpful, and they're there for one another in the best interest of their clients. The vast majority, more often than not.
Yeah, it's nice. It's not there's certainly trust and estates litigation, sometimes after people die. And there's guardianship, which can become quite contentious if you have family members feuding. But it is a really great area of the law in that we all do it because we care about people. And so in the end, even with a guardianship, even if we're fighting and we believe your client's not has the best interest mind, everything's focused on that individual who's lost their capacity, and how do we all make things better for that person. And so I think it lends itself to people really getting along and helping each other towards a common purpose.
Yeah, and as a member of the senior service industry, I find that the people who are in business to help seniors are good people. They're doing it, to help others. We all do it to make money, but a big part of that is because we want to help others, and it's a great place to be. And it's certainly where I belong.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Britt. This was a fantastic interview, and I loved hearing what you have to offer. I do love working with you. Before we go, do you want to give a shout out to someone else in our industry?
Yeah, sure. So I would love to give a shout out to Kyle of Duet Home Care. He's a really good resource. He's got a great organization. They provide great companion care and really are top notch. I only hear great things about the individuals there. So
no, absolutely. I've referred him to clients, and he's a great guy, and they do have a wonderful service, and maybe we'll see him on here in the months to come. So thanks again, Britt, and everybody, thanks for listening or watching, and I'll see you at my next podcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you.